Just taking a minute to get this all redirecting to YouTube properly. So, okay. I believe we are now live on YouTube.
Thank you very much, Heather. Good morning, everyone. It's 9:32, and I'm going to call this meeting to order.
Redirecting.
And in response to the COVID-19 crisis, we're still continuing to hold council meetings electronically. Our office is closed. However, members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting of council electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video that's found on our website. So it appears our efforts to flatten the curve may be working, that the rate of the incline has decreased, but so much is still uncertain. And every day we see that this ever-changing virus is giving us new surprises. I want to thank staff and all of our residents for dealing with the uncertainty and the changing virus, and being flexible and ingenious in how they're working with this. The resilience is great to see. So we'll just keep working ahead as our leaders at the province and federally are guiding us through this crisis. So we'll get down to our business and our monthly meeting. There are no additions to the agenda. I'll ask for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, then the first item of business is the adoption of the minutes. We have 3 minutes from March 11th, March 16th, and March 30th. Are there any errors or exceptions to note? Seeing none, then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that the municipality of Middlesex Centre approves the council meetings from the meetings I just mentioned as printed. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? Oh, any opposed? Seeing none, those minutes are carried. We can move on to the consent agenda now. We have a number of items here. Let's table this first. Could I have a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Middlesex Centre receives and approves the consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.14 inclusive as recommended in the reports? Councillor Silva and Councillor Scott. Are there any questions on any of these items from any of the preparers? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Then I'll call the vote. Oh, Councillor Heffernan, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, thanks. I had a couple of questions on a few of them. The first one was 6.6, the Aggregate Resources Act. So the recommendation from the staff is to, or at least the comment is that self-filed amendments for site plans are okay by the municipality and private owners. Is that what I'm understanding?
I'll ask the CEO to update us on that.
Through the chair, I'll defer to Rob on that question. He helped provide the report to me, so he's better positioned.
So through Madam Mayor, yeah, the self-filing of the amendments, those are for very specific types of amendments. They're for I guess what you call kind of the run-of-the-mill amendments, things that are minor adjustments on the site plan. So the intent there is just to speed up the process. To even do those types of minor amendments right now can take months and months, as we've seen on some of our own. So this is to speed that up. And so I don't see, because there still has to be compliance and there's still yearly compliance checks, regardless whether they self-file or not. I'm satisfied that that's a good approach to take.
Okay, thank you. I was just concerned with the water. Well, excuse me, well water in rural areas, but that's covered within what you're talking about then. Is that correct, Rob?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thanks. The other one was 6.7, leaves of absence for bereavement. I'm just wondering, like the standard seems to be 3 days. I was just wondering where the 5 days comes from. Not that I disagree that 5 days is often needed, can you just fill me in a little bit on that? I think that was from the Director of Corporate Services.
Yeah, through the. Yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor. Through the chair, that's consistent with Employment Standards Act, that we updated the policy to make it reflective for our full-time staff that they have up until that time off for an immediate family member.
And what, why do part-time not get it?
Part-time, through the chair, part-time staff do have an allotment of time off, so it's all segregated out in the policy.
Is, excuse me,
And
is that the 6 days that they have under the ESA?
Through the chair, it's in accordance with the ESA. It's for it's based on the situation. So our policy is now reflective of the type of need that the employee requires, and it's broken out that way.
Okay, thank you. And the one, sorry.
Pardon me, sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I have one other question on the drinking water report. The internal report for Ilderton says it has ductile iron. What does that mean exactly?
So ductile, sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, ductile iron is a type of pipe material. So there's cast iron, ductile iron, and pretty much anything that goes in now is PVC pipe. So ductile iron is just a type of material that was used during a specific kind of time frame. So, and it still is used in some cases, but.
So it doesn't promote lead poisoning or anything like that?
No, correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Very well. Are there any other questions from any other councillors? Seeing none, then I'll call a vote to on the consent agenda items as I read. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried, and we can move on to staff reports. Item 7.1, I'll take a mover to seconder that Middlesex Centre approve the agreement for the provision of services for building inspection services with the municipality of North Middlesex for a period of 6 months. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shipley and Councillor Heffernan, and I think building will present that report. Oh, there you are. Would you like to make a presentation?
Certainly, Mayor. Through the Mayor to Council, so Middlesex Centre staff have been contacted by staff at Middlesex, request to assist them with the retirement of their chief building official. And currently North Middlesex is coordinating with Southwest Middlesex and Adelaide Metcalfe for a combined shared building service models with ours and Lucan Biddulph's, but they're not quite there yet with the building department. So they have asked us to assist. I suspect this will take upwards of 1 to 2 months before they have that building department up and our neighbors to the south and assisting Lucan Biddulph, which is to their east border. It makes good sense. And we've reviewed their building permit activity this year. It's fairly minimal compared to what we see, and we think we can absorb it over the next couple months.
Okay, thanks to the chief building official. Are there any questions of that? Councillor Silva?
Thanks, through you, Madam Mayor. Arnie, I'm just concerned what happens if they aren't running up and running in a month or two. What if it's 4 or 5 months? And I know how busy your staff are going to be with additional applications just in Kamoka and Kilworth, never mind Lucan Biddulph and Ilderton and everywhere else that's going rather quickly. What if it's not going for 4 or 5 months? What then? Sure.
Through the Mayor. So the agreement does have an out clause that is limited to 2 weeks. There are consultants in the province. Adelaide Metcalfe has taken advantage of one of these consultants that can provide building inspection and approvals on behalf of the municipality. So I that we will be very busy when the construction. We don't want to put ourselves at risk of not meeting our requirements for our builders. At this time, we don't know when that reopening is happening. people can mobilize once it does happen. So at this time, we're satisfied we can cover the demand, but we certainly will have regard for that when construction regulations are loosened. And
Okay, I'm not getting a lot of your response because of the robotic voice. I call it Cyloning, but I think I got the gist of it. Thanks.
Is there any other question for, Deputy Mayor Brennan?
Ernie, a couple of things. Will they be able to do their stuff, their builders up there electronically, like the builders in our area are doing? And secondly, right now, you're just issuing building permits. They can't really start anything, can they, right now, the developers?
yeah, through the mayor, and I'll try to speak a bit slower. Through the mayor, one of our conditions of Middlesex is that they sign on with Cloud Permit, former Evolve building permit system. So we can do all of our work electronically. Their applicants can submit electronically, and I'll be attending their council meeting next week to speak to the Cloud Permit system. They've already made contact with Cloud Permit, and Middlesex County IT is working with getting that set up so it's ready to go right away. Your other question, John, building permits. Only building permits are being issued for essential types of construction, which does include agricultural, but does not include residential. So that alone will assist in reducing the amount of activity that we see there.
Thank you, Arnie. I don't see any questions. I'll call a vote on this item then. Are there any members opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Moving on to 7.2, the corporate clothing allowance policy. The motion before us is that report CAO 19-2020 regarding updated corporate clothing allowance policy be received, and that the corporate clothing allowance policy appended to report CAO 19-2020 be approved. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Brennan and Councillor Silva, is there a presentation, Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Leading up to the unfortunate pandemic, we had already been looking at one of our policies with respect to clothing allowance, and it's an over-encompassing policy that included the input of multiple staff departments, all of the directors, that we undertook a review starting earlier in the year. And it just heightened our awareness to finalize this with respect to ensuring that we have personal protection equipment for all of our staff, particularly those that are out in the field. So we were able to finalize this review, and happy to report that it's a policy that provides more encompassing for all of our employees, and it's broken down by employee job function. It allows for greater flexibility and allowance for our employees, whereas the previous policy did not have that option. So it gives ability for our employees to manage what they require for their personal protection equipment needs. And there's a slight increase when we undertook this review, only because we've expanded the amount of allowance to part-time contract. And we've also included over a 5-year term for volunteer firefighters so that they also have safety boots as well. So it's a policy that we think is sound in the sense that it now covers all of our employees. It's spread out. The one item that I will bring to your attention is that we are just holding for some administrative allowances for this year so that there's no expenditures, only for our outside staff that require the PPE, that they can go ahead and purchase what they require. I'd be happy to take any questions in regards to the policy.
Thank you. Do we have questions on this report? Councillor Silva?
Just a quick comment
Go ahead.
through you, Madam Mayor. I know we've talked about this a few times in the past. Can we stop using volunteer firefighters as a term? It's in here in the financial implications. They're not volunteers, they're professional on call. Maybe just call them firefighters.
Sure. Yep. Good call.
Seeing no other questions, no question, Councillor Scott? No. I'll call a vote then. Anyone opposed to this? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you. Item 7.3, with regard to the compensation management update, the motion before us is that the Human Resource Policy 1.10 compensation management updated time and lieu procedure be approved with recommendations as outlined in report CAO 2120. Could I have a mover and a seconder to table this, please? Councillor Silva and Councillor Heffernan. Is there a report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're just, as you can see on today's agenda, we're taking a thorough review of many of our policies. This one is another housekeeping amendment, just wanting to ensure that staff that are properly included in some of the main activities of the organization are part of the time and lieu process. And since the pandemic, we have 2 employees that were not included in that process. And in addition to that, just to take into consideration a bit of the changes that took place in the Community Services Department. So just housekeeping to bring this to your attention that we've updated our time in lieu to include our HR and our communications positions that are part of our control group, and to make sure that they have the opportunity to take part of the 1 week time in lieu. So it's just a main housekeeping to make sure we have the right staff that take part in this process.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the report? Seeing none, any opposed? No one is opposed, and then that motion is carried. Thank you. Item 7.4, the motion before us is that the report from Corporate Services number 2020 regarding COVID-19 financial impacts, report number 1, be received for information. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor Scott and Deputy Mayor Brennan. Would the CFO like to comment on this or present content?
Through you, Mayor DeVete. So the report is just a summary report of the financial impacts to the municipality to date, to the date in middle of April of 2020. So we have summarized what we've been experiencing in the last month or so, and this is information for council, and it will be information that we'll be providing each month to council on a go-forward basis throughout the pandemic to keep council informed of the impacts to the municipality. So to begin, the municipality did put in some relief measures for our residents and small businesses, and those are summarized with respect to the cost to date that the municipality has incurred or the lost revenues. That is pretty minor at this point of $9,129.48, and there are additional that will be incurred in April, later April and into May, that we'll be reporting on at a later date. Community services impacts, as you'll note, is one of the larger impacts we're experiencing with respect to the rental revenues. So at this time, it's about $169,678. That's a significant impact, and we are looking at that department in order to find some cost containment strategies to support that lost revenue. Some of those rentals may happen later in the year, but that will depend on lifting the restrictions and how the pandemic continues. The Enviro Depots open this Saturday. We are only accepting yard waste at this time. Any of the other waste items that have an associated revenue for the municipality or cost recovery will not be accepted this time. Therefore, there's a projected loss of 924 with respect to April. That is based on historical revenues earned. And it is to note that this might not be lost revenue rather than just deferred until people can bring those type of items to the Enviro Depots. They might just be holding on to them at this time. Investment impacts. So the municipality does use savings accounts at this time for our large, our general bank account, as well as our reserve fund bank account. And with the decrease in the interest rate, we are experiencing some financial hardship there. At this point for March, it was only $11,000, but it will continue to increase. And so we will be losing some revenue. We are doing some work in the background of what we should be doing to increase this or to at least mitigate some of those losses. However, given the instability of our cash flows and are unknown at this time. We're not recommending any changes in our investments until later analysis. So council will be updated. Water consumption, as water consumption has been a concern of some of our residents calling in, we have done an analysis with respect to the usage. So you'll notice that the period of March 2020, the water revenue and the consumption has actually decreased from February 2020 and March 2019. We also do have more accounts billed in that time period as well. So it does look like people are taking the advice, information that's been put on our website on conserving their water. A lot of this decrease could be contributed to some of our larger commercial users, and we'll continue to monitor that in April as more businesses were shut down in April than they were in March. So we'll continue to monitor that, but it doesn't look like the consumption has increased significantly. This doesn't mean that for your specific household, for any of our residents, that you may not have experienced a little bit of an increase. However, this is the total increase overall. So property taxes at this time, they were mailed in February. The first installment was due in February, with the second installment due in May 29th, 2020. At this time, we are not recommending any deferral of the property tax payment or the interest and penalties at this for that payment. We are continuing to monitoring it, the situation. The province has deferred the payment of the school board taxes until September, and then the September payment till December, with 2 payments in December. So what they're doing is they're deferring it for cash flow purposes. They're not reducing what the residents owe, nor what the municipality owes. Additionally, the county is looking into this, but no action has been taken at this time. We have looked at any of our supplementary and omitted taxes, and we are continuing to date those future dated for those payments that are due. Property tax registrations are frozen by the province at this time, so we're just monitoring that situation. And then finally, cost containment. The municipality is in the process of preparing a report, so staff are working diligently at this. It will come to council on May 13th with the cost containment strategies. This will be broken into many factors. Some will be those that are a fallout of the pandemic, such as our hydro and our union gas and water usage, as our facilities are not being utilized to their full extent. So we will experience some savings in those areas. Additionally, fuel savings. We are experiencing a low fuel cost that was not anticipated for 2020. So we will see a nice savings in that area. So we are going to be projecting some of those costs and try to make some savings to offset those lost revenues that we're experiencing. So the municipalities is financially stable for 2020, and that we do not have to dip into any of our reserve funds. There will be a very detailed report that comes on May 13th that will outline all of this stuff. I am pointing out that we do have about a little over $2 million in our tax rate stabilization reserve fund. This is what this pandemic and situations like this is what that tax rate stabilization reserve fund is to be used for. It's these unprecedented situations where we can actually support and pay for those, like that working capital, the loss that we're losing and those revenues and that cash flow. At this time, we have not had to utilize this, but it is something that we are monitoring, and we'll keep council apprised of that situation. And finally, and I have mentioned this before, so the municipality, we cannot budget for a deficit, but a municipality can run a deficit. I'm not predicting that the municipality will be running a deficit in 2020. We are looking at that cost containment to ensure that we do not fall into that situation and that we are financially stable. One of the important things to note in council's responsibility is to ensure the financial stability of this municipality and that we're making those fiscally responsible decisions for the entire community. And I do understand that there are some financial hardships out there, and we are looking at those and working with those residents. We are staying apprised of what the federal and provincial governments are doing and those measures that they're putting in place to get the cash, that money in the hands of people who need it in order for them to ensure that they're paying for their financial bills. So the report summarizes the lost revenues to date and that we are continuing to monitor this situation. And like I had said, there'll be another report on financial measures coming on May 13th, as well as the cost containment strategy that the municipality will be putting forth, which will identify a lot of our operating costs, as well as be looking at long-term with our capital items that we can defer until next year, possibly the year after, the timing of these projects to assist with our cash flow to ensure that we can continue to pay our own bills for the municipality. At this time, if there's any questions.
Thank you for that, Tiffany. There's a lot there. So I'll start with Councillor Silva. Go ahead.
Fairly simple question through you, Madam Mayor, possibly to Scott, maybe Tiffany. The community centers, the arenas, pretty sure the ice have been taken out, which obviously reduces our operating costs quite a bit. What about really silly, simple things like just turning down the thermostat, considering the fact that there's probably nobody there, that sort of thing? What else, like what other practical things have we done to try and reduce our operating costs?
Yes, through the mayor, to Councillor Silva, we've pretty much mothballed most of the, pretty much all of our facilities. If anyone has popped into the office as of late, they'll know that it's quite chilly in here, and so we've taken those measures across the board to try and capture as much utility savings as we can. We do have there is one ice pad in still at the Canadian pad at the Wellness Center. But the way the system operates there, we'll have to give some thought to whether we decide to take that out. It was actually cheaper for us to leave it in for now because of the reclaimed heat that we gain off of that plant. It pretty much heats the rest of the building, and so our HVAC units aren't running. So, and the cost to take ice out and put it back in is quite, it can be quite expensive. So we're just trying, it's a bit of a balancing act right now with that site. And then if we were to turn around and open up, we want it to be able to, open up fairly quickly with respect to that. So we have taken those measures, and it'll be a couple of months once we get the hydro bills in and the gas bills we'll be able to recognize some of the savings that we've had there in those facilities.
Other questions on this report? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. There's a lot of content there, and appreciate that staff is staying all over this. This is clearly. Oh, Deputy Mayor, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Tiffany. Tiffany, I suspect that the report you're going to be bringing forth in early May to show some of the cost savings that we've had will kind of counterbalance how much money we've lost, and we'll get a true picture of actually how much money we're down as far as income versus what we saved. Will that give us a better picture on May 13th when you have that?
So through you, Mayor DeVee, it will in a sense, but with respect to a lot of our invoices, like Scott had mentioned, like our hydro bills are about a couple months behind when we actually receive them. Same with Union Gas is always delayed. So getting that full picture of those cost savings will be difficult, but what that cost containment report will contain will be the actual planned reduction. So we are looking at things like professional development. Unless it's regarding your license or your professional designation, we are looking at putting those on hold for this year. We're looking at different items within our operating budget, such as anything to do with our staff barbecue in the summer, our staff Christmas events, our long-term service awards. Those are all things that we will be canceling this year and possibly deferring till next year. Those are things that we're suggesting to make sure that we're spending the money on things and keeping our cash flow healthy. So those savings will offset a lot of that. Where I'm really concentrating on is the community services revenue. And we have about $1.5 million that we need to come up with cost savings in order to not see that deficit specifically for that department. And we can find savings within other departments. We're looking at deferring some of our operating projects that we were planning on doing this year or reevaluating them for next year. So those, you will see a better picture, but when it comes to the actual savings we've experienced, I don't think I'll have that data, as that report is due Friday. So I'm not sure if I will have all of that in there, but I will have our planned cost savings.
Does anyone have anything else? So there's a lot in there, and I think what you're saying is basically anything that might be described as non-essential is off the table. Anything to keep the municipality safe and all the basic services provided is still on the table. I did have one question though. Will your report in May also give us an idea of what proportion of monies spent will we have an idea of how much we might be able to ask for assistance with as a part of the emergency spending piece?
Yeah, through Mayor DeVete, we are looking at tracking all of our COVID-19 specific expenses. So a lot of those things which you would have seen in the March budget to actual on the consent agenda in March and a little bit into April related more to staffing costs related specifically to COVID-19, as well as some materials and supplies. I don't believe that we've received or we've incurred a significant amount of expenses tracking into the COVID-19 account. However, a lot of the time we are tracking our time separately to see if there are any programs where municipalities can recover, and that would go to a lot of the time spent by, say, this group, the senior leadership team, as well as many of our employees doing specific things for COVID-19. But yeah, so we are experiencing some, but we are tracking that completely separate, and you will continue to see it. I believe in the later meeting in May, I'll have the April budget to actual. Once again, it's just due to the timing.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, through the Madam Chair, just to let council know, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities just recently released information with respect to requesting financial support from the federal government. And it's a big push of all the municipalities to come together. So I'm just reviewing that information now, and I want to put that on the May 13th council agenda. That's another consideration that we can put forward and put our support behind, and we'll see if we get any support from all the municipalities in the country. So that'll come forward as well for May 13th. That speaks to that.
Okay, thank you. We'll have a lot of numbers to look at then. I'll call a vote then on the report number 2020. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item 7.5, which is Corporate Services Report 24, 2020, the budget amendment with regard to capital projects. The motion is that the 2020 budget be amended to add the Settlement Community Stormwater Master Plan capital project for $77,230 to be funded 100% from the Stormwater Reserve Fund, and that the 2020 budget be amended to add the Ilderton Wastewater Treatment Facility capital project for $20,000 from the Development Charge Reserve Fund, and that the 2020 budget be amended to add the Kilworth West Sanitary Sewer Connection capital project for $20,000, with $4,200 being funded from the Wastewater Reserve Fund and $15,800 being funded from the Development Charges Reserve Fund, and further that the 2020 budget be amended to add the Mill Creek Lane capital project for $8,600 to be funded from the Stormwater Reserve Fund. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Silva, thank you. Is there a presentation on this report?
No.
Tiffany.
So through you, Mayor DeVete, so this is more of a housekeeping item with respect to the budget. You will notice that in the 2019 year-end capital, we had some large surpluses where money was not spent. These specific projects were expected to be completed in 2019 during the 2020 budget creation. However, they were not, and they do have some leftover invoices and work that is actually being performed in 2020 related to these. So we have requested that we add these into the 2020 budget. The money is not additional money being raised on the tax levy. This is money that was sitting in the reserve funds to be used in 2019 for these projects. However, they just were not complete. Those invoices did not occur. They will be occurring in 2020. We're looking at spending that reserve fund money in 2020. It's a timing issue. With respect, if there's any questions on specific projects, all of these would fall under the Public Works and Engineering Department. So I would defer to Rob, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from council have a question on this? I'll take Councillor Scott and then Councillor Silva.
Yes, through the mayor to probably Public Works, Rob. I just wondered, do we have an update on the Mill Creek projects that need to be finished there? I know they've been ongoing for some time now.
So through Madam Mayor to Councillor Scott, yeah, so the item that's listed here, there was some, I guess you'd call it deficiency or some additional work that was identified late last fall with a drainage connection, and that's what was taken care of this spring. I've been subsequently contacted by the owner, and he believes there's still a small issue there that we're looking into to resolve. So we're trying to get that cleaned up this spring.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Silva, or is there a follow-on, Councillor Scott? Do you have anything else? You're on mute.
There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Yes, please, if I could. Through the mayor to Rob, I know that there was some work to be done in those drains and then also on that curve, some landscaping, and they had to fill in some areas there. Has that been done, or that's the ones that's still slated for this spring? That was because of the guy, I mean, I forget who did that project, but they hadn't been coming back to finish that, so I understand.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, the contractor was Briex. So they did come back this spring to deal with some of the drainage issues. I think the curve, you're probably referring to the curb return and the alignment into the existing road. It kind of has a bit of an odd configuration there. Is that the area you're referring to? Yeah, okay. So that has not been resolved yet. That's something that we'll look at. They did as per design, so we'll look at making a modification there if we think it's necessary. So.
Okay, moving on then, Councillor Silva, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Rob. I guess two quick questions. The settlement community stormwater master plan, is that just because we thought the work was going to get done last year and it's still at this point not complete?
Through Madam Mayor, yeah, so that's correct. We had hoped that it was going to wrap up last year in 2019, and then we got into some communications with developers. The issues with residents had in large part all been dealt with, but there's a few different developments that are in the books that we were trying to make sure there's coordination between the master plan and the developments. So that's kind of what's been ongoing. Hence we carried the budget forward now. And it's at a point where Stantec has submitted what is hoped to be their final draft. And we're just doing an internal review, and we'll get comments back to them and then be bringing it to council.
Okay, so the budget hasn't increased. We just didn't have it allocated into 2020 budget.
That's correct.
Okay, cool. The Kilworth West sanitary sewer connection, what's still left to be done there? My understanding is it's connected. Flows are going to Kamoka instead of the Kilworth WWTF. So what's the additional $20,000 for?
Yeah, so through Madam Mayor, so this is, again, this project will come in below budget, but this was so this was for items that were in the original tender. It's work for Briex to complete fencing and restoration around the facility. It's just work that wasn't completed in the fall, and they've actually already done some of this this spring, and they just have a little bit left to do. So it'll be cleaned up this year.
All right, thanks.
That's it then. Seeing no other questions, I'll call a vote on this. Is there anyone opposed? And seeing none, that is carried. Thank you. The last item we have is the Middlesex Centre 2019 Planning Summary Report. The motion before us is that Council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre receives the Middlesex Centre 2019 Planning Summary Report as information. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Scott and Deputy Mayor, call Councillor Brennan, sorry, that'd be the Deputy Mayor. Is there, would the planning staff like to present? I'm not sure which of you would like to speak to this. Is there? You're on mute, Marianne.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, just a little louder, I think.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
This is just an update for the 2019 planning applications that were either approved or processed through Middlesex Centre. Generally, there has been an increase in consent, site plan approvals, and plans of subdivision and condominium. And we expect that trend to continue into this year as well. However, things like official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments year over year have been pretty consistent. Looking forward, we expected the rate to stay about the same given the current COVID-19 environment. This is something that has slowed down a little bit, but we are still working through getting some of the plan of subdivisions and zoning bylaws and official plan amendments forward. There's a lot of work going on in the background, so we're continuing to process these applications. And as well, something that you'll be seeing in the next few weeks is our official plan review. Within the next year, some of the policies will be updated and would help with some of the zoning bylaw amendments that are coming forward and some of the official plan amendments. So you might see a change in numbers in future years as well. And I'll defer to Dan if he has any other comments about it.
Would you like to comment, Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I just want to say hi to everyone because it's been a while since it's been in this forum. Yeah, just kind of what Marion touched on. The as you can see in the report, the application volume has slightly increased. The one thing I will note is while we are seeing a slight increase, the level of complexity of applications has also increased from 2019, from previous years, and then even into 2020 we're seeing now. There was 3 privately initiated official plan amendments, 2 which allowed for secondary residential dwelling units within agricultural areas, and then year-round occupancy of Oriole Park communities. So that's something that we're still working on through the site plan side with that group. Generally speaking, it's hard to kind of speak to what the makeup of the applications was just as Mary and I came on board in January 2020. But if there are any questions, we'll definitely try to answer them to the best of our abilities or bring answers back if there are.
Okay, thank you for that report. Does anyone on council have a question for planning staff? I don't see any. Dan, if I could just clarify one thing. You said the complexity has increased. What kinds of factors that are causing that or contributing to that complexity, or is it the changes in the acts, or what kinds of variables are we talking about here?
Yeah, through Madam Mayor. I think in terms of complexity, we're actually looking at, we're seeing a shift in development trends in the community in general. So, traditionally you're seeing a lot more single family home development on larger lots, especially in the outlying communities. Now we're seeing, townhouse developments, even apartment blocks, large scale commercial developments, especially within the Kilmirth and Camoka area, Ilderton as well. And there's certainly a lot of development pressure moving out from the City of London coming into Middlesex Center. So that's what we mean in terms of complexity is a more, varied range of developments and that are more of an intense form of development, I would say.
Great, thanks kindly. Michael, would you like to jump in?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just thanks to Marion and Dan for moving the applications forward. With recent changes to the regulations dealing with planning applications, we are exploring the usage of this technology. And starting next month, we will be bringing forward planning applications to council for processing. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention that we will start to include delegations and public meeting processes into these virtual meetings so that we can continue to move forward with applications. And where there really hasn't been too much of a backlog, but we want to really move things forward. So that'll definitely eliminate any backlog that does happen.
That's great, great news, and it's good that we'll be ahead of the backlog. Don't want to get things backed up too much. So is there anything else before we call a vote on that? Seeing nothing then, is there anyone opposed to this motion? Seeing none, that motion is carried. Thank you very much. We're moving on to correspondence items. The motion before us is that council for the municipality of Middlesex Centre receives correspondence items 8.1 through 9 as information. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Arts, was that you? Yep, okay, and Councillor Scott, thank you. Are there any questions from council on any of these items or anything anyone wants to comment on? Okay, seeing none, then I'll call a vote to receive as an information. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried then. Deputy Mayor Brennan, are there any items or county council information pieces that you would like to speak to us about?
We really haven't had a council meeting, county council meeting since last time, but we did have a county council update yesterday. Just reported that sick time is very low at the county level. They're finding that productivity levels are way up with their staff working from home. They're looking at a service delivery plus thing that they're going to be working on later this year on how to deliver services in a different form to what they do now. There's most of the staff is only in the county building about 1 day a week doing stuff. They're looking at a community paramedicine program too, to try to keep people out of the hospital, I guess basically is what they're doing. And we're looking at next Tuesday from 2 to 4 award and update on different things that are going on. They're meeting with the city over some different things and that. So other than that, things in the county are really good too. Everything is healthy and things are moving forward. And much like us, it's business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that we hear a lot in the news right now about the seniors' residences, the long-term care homes, and it's good news to report that Strathmere Lodge currently is still COVID-free. The amount of testing is being ramped up as it is in most facilities. And I think you probably saw this too, Deputy Mayor. There was a little note from the CAO at the county indicating that with the increased testing of the long-term care facilities, there was an example of a home in Toronto that had 9 staff and 9 residents test positive, all of whom were asymptomatic, which again points to the variation that we see in how the disease presents and the risks associated with not knowing the status of people who are working in homes and so forth. So say it's a wily kind of virus. So I think our care to make sure we're not transmitting it to others is well-founded. So, oh, and the other part of that I should mention is there was concern, I think we mentioned it in one of our update meetings, but the personal protective equipment, the PPEs that staff had access to at Strathmere was disconcerting to the director there, because the best he could do was ascertain that, in fact, your order for items has been received from the regular vendor. Bruce Power has, you may have seen this on the news too in different stories, but Bruce Power was putting together a great big huge donation to various facilities across the province. Fortunately, we were amongst the recipients at the county level, and the items are not needed for the EMS people, and they will be used at the Strathmere Lodge, which now is under different rules on how they use it, how they use their equipment and items. So between the quantity and the new rules, they're comfortable that they will not be exposing residents to illness and transmitting between residents and staff. So that's a bright note for us to be glad for. So thank you for, oh, Councillor Sylvia, you have a question.
Just an additional comment. So it's great that, you know, a county-owned facility hasn't seen any cases, but there, according to the health unit reports, I've been looking at them, and there was a case recently at Country Terrace in Kamoka. So it's doubly important that people really watch themselves. And if you, obviously, if you're asymptomatic, you're not going to think to get a test, but if you have any sort of symptoms, definitely go get a test, especially if you're in vicinity of high-risk individuals.
Yep. And just to note, the Middlesex London Health Unit does post more detailed data in terms of how the numbers break out. So in our municipality right now, there are 6 cases, and I may be wrong, 14 or 16 in Strathroy Caradot, but anyways, it's broken out by municipality. So you can check that on their website. The charts are there, and then new cases and changes are seen there as well. So if you're interested, go and look there. Is there any other business? Does anyone want to raise any? Deputy Mayor Brennan.
Yeah, just to reinforce your point, Mayor, with the report from Toronto, that even though those people tested positive, they weren't showing any signs, but they can still spread the COVID-19. So I think this is something we're going to have to be very aware of going forward before we start opening too much up, that there are people out there that are testing positive, showing no signs, but they can still spread it. So that's very concerning without those facts being put out there.
Yep, agreed. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we can move to the bylaws. The motion before us is that bylaws 2020, number 25 to 32 inclusive be approved, passed, and adopted. Is there a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Silva and Councillor Heffernan. All in, any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried then. And I guess that would be it then. We can ask for a motion that council for the municipality of Middlesex Centre adjourns on the 29th of April at 10:22 p.m. Mover? Deputy Mayor, oh, and
AM.
Councillor Heffernan. Did you have do you have a question, Councillor Silva?
Yeah, you said 10:22 p.m.
Oh, AM, pardon me. In the morning, we're still here. It's not a marathon session. Sorry about that. Okay, so I had Deputy Mayor and Councillor Heffernan. Did you get that, clerk, then? All right, so we are adjourned. Thank you for your time.